6.5%.
Yeah.
So what does that mean if we want to net 2.2 million? What would we need to go?
Yeah. What would be the listed price?
For? Yeah.
Okay. So if you wanted to net 2.2, let me just do some calculations for you. So you would be looking then at listing somewhere in the region as a guide to allow a little tiny bit of room for negotiation, somewhere in the region of 2375 to net your 2.2.
2375.
In order to be able to net your 2.2.
So if you list at 2375, and because Pete works at 3%,
yeah,
and so if we want to net 2 million and at 3%, he said that he can list just below 2.3 million. To give us an offer, let's say, of about 2 million, 2.2 million, so he can list just below 2.3.
Yeah.
How would that work for you? Would you be comfortable to list at 2.375 and he lists at just, let's say, 2.295 around there?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things with it. Is obviously when it comes to this kind of strategy, this, as you can imagine, has to be on a mandate agreement. Two reasons as to why. First of all, obviously the funds that kind of go into marketing something like this is impossible to be able to do on a joint or an open mandate. So you kind of have to do maybe photography, a couple of websites. That's kind of obviously all that any agency can do on a joint or an open. The issue with that is maybe we kind of come across some buyers, which would be great, but we're not throwing the net wide enough to get buyer competition, to create the strategies that we need to get all the buyers through at one time, get them all through on those 45 minutes on a show house to get you the highest price possible. So although it's probably not great for me, what I would say is you better listing with one agent, even if it's not me. So even if it's Pete, it's Pete's. But in terms of what's best for you guys, you better listing with one firm than you are two. The other reason is that if you've got more than one agency, what they're doing is they're competing against each other to get the house sold, not competing with all the other buyers to get you the best price, if that makes sense. So what my strategy is to get all the buyers to kind of come through me. Whereas if I've got 90% of the buyers and Pete's got 10% of the buyers, but one of the kind of good buyers happens to come through him, because although they've seen my marketing, they can kind of go to him and it's a 3% firm, so they think they can get it cheap because it's cheaper commission and all the rest of it. He's going to kind of come to you with the offer. He's not going to phone all the buyers that I've brought through to see if any of them is prepared to kind of go up in price. Do you know what I mean? And we had a situation I heard the other day. I came across a client and he'd sold his house. And he was telling me he'd had a terrible experience. I said, well, why have you had a terrible experience? He said, no, I had it on an open mandate. He says, he'd been trying to sell it for a long time. It hadn't worked and he was kind of getting frustrated. And he says an agent bought him an offer and it was 250,000 Rand less than asking price. But because he wanted to move on, he was going to Mossel Bay. He said, okay, I'll sign it. He said that afternoon, he got a phone call from another agency. And they said one of the people that they bought through the week before has decided to make a cash offer at full asking price.
Wow.
And he'd already signed the other offer, 250,000 Rand less, about 4 hours before. So if it was one agent that was dealing with that, what they should have done is phoned all the other buyers. The other buyer would say, yes, I also do want to put an offer in. They'd have taken both offers to the buyer, got them the best price.
That's why you say
that was
working
possible.
through one agent, concentrating those buyers.
Yes. So I don't know what Pete does for 3%. Obviously, I don't run Pete's business. I wouldn't know what he does. I wouldn't imagine for a second that all of this kind of strategy is involved at 3%. Not because Pete's not a nice guy. I mean, I know he's a friend or a colleague. It's just you physically can't spend this much money marketing a home at 3%. So for you guys, in terms of what you end up netting, this is where I would say you would benefit. Because the average, even with the agencies that are charging 5%, is a drop of 7.5% plus VAT. But if our average drop is just 2.1%, even if we're charging 4.5% more than peak, which we're not, we're only charging 3.5% more, we're achieving on average 5.4% more than any other agency, even working at 5%. So for every R1,000,000 a property is worth, we're saving a client on average 54,000 Rand. So the additional you pay us, yes, it's more, but if you get a higher amount net in your pocket, I would imagine that's all that's really, really important to you.
Okay, so because obviously Pete said that he has the buyer database, he can match it with buyers, he advertises on P24, etc. But what we don't see is the videos and the all this technology that you guys use.
The technology platform does seem to be quite a lot, more attractive on your strategies that you're using. We haven't seen any of that before.
Yeah.
That's true.
So Pete will have a pool of buyers, but there's not Pete's buyers and Michael's buyers and Jimmy from Seif's buyers.
Okay.
There's one pool of buyers that's out there. So they might think, well, look, I'd like to work with Pete because his stock might be cheap, so to speak, because he's charging 3%. They might think that they can get it for a bargain. But I want to make your house exclusive. I don't want people to think that they can get it on the cheap because the commission is low or because somebody thinks I want to sell it privately, so I'll get it for a bargain. I want people to think that there's other buyers that's interested. I've got to compete with them. I want to know how much have I got to pay for this house, not how cheap am I going to get it. And I think that's what I want to try and convey in your home. And if it's listed once, professional photography, if there's one professional board outside instead of a good one and a bad one, professional photos, not great photos. I need to be able to control all of that so that your house kind of comes across as highly sought after.